If you want to learn more about effective management, head over to mattsingers.com and sign up for my free management training.
Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello, and welcome back to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today I'm joined by Tim Redmond. Welcome, Tim.
Welcome. Well, hey, thank you for having me, Matt. It's going to be a great time together. I'm looking forward to it.
I am super duper excited. Like myself, you have a lot of good business background and so on. So I think we will have a great conversation today. Just before we jump into it, there's people around the world who don't yet know who you are. So let's change that and give us a little bit of an introduction. Who are you and how have you ended up where you are right now?
Well, I'm my claim to fame is I'm one of 11 kids. And so I've had to learn management skills from very early on. I graduated accounting. I worked as a CPA for PricewaterhouseCoopers. We grew a software company. A couple of years in that, I moved over to help grow a software company that we grew up from two of us to about 400 employees, over 40 million a year. Sold it to Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks and Quicken, and after we sold our business, I went to work for Intuit to help transition our 22,000 clients over. And then I took about a 10-year hiatus from a 10-year break from directly owning businesses and growing them to traveling around the world, speaking to leaders, business leaders, government leaders, pastors of churches, to help them run their organizations better. The same lessons I learned in growing this firm and selling it, and even the experience I had at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I brought in to help them grow their organizations. And then about the last 9 years or so, I've been full-time into coaching businesses, and the coaching kind of bit me in the rear, if you will. People would get done with a seminar and they say, can you help me with my business? Do you offer coaching services? I go, what's your question? I spend a couple hours with them, not realizing that there are people that are charging fees for what I'm giving. So I'm like, wait a minute, So I actually started to create a coaching service based on the demand that people had at the seminars I was conducting. And so now that's my full-time focus. I do some speaking, but I love taking somebody's business and just transforming it into a wealth-building powerhouse that works for them instead of them being a slave to it.
Yeah, that's always great when you see that and when you experience that. And I mean, you change people's life basically, right? Because most people are.
That's what I love about it. Yes. Yeah. Just, and it's, we've got a good sized firm. We've got, we're approaching a couple hundred clients that we coach on a weekly basis, about 150, between 150 and 200, depends on what month it is. But we've done really well. We get huge results, and it's not, how do you feel? And let's go to this seminar. And did you win by attending my little online video course? No, it's none of that. It's like, is your top line better? Is your bottom line better? Is your time freedom? Do you have more time freedom to chase your wife around some tropical island buck naked, or whatever is your kicks? We want to make sure the business works for the owner. And I have a dramatic statement that you or other people may not agree with, but I believe the number one purpose of the business is not to serve your customers. Now, if you don't serve your customers well, the business won't serve you well, but the number one purpose of your business is to serve the owner. Yep. So how does that owner want to be served? And so we reverse engineer the business to make sure your business is serving you and you're not just serving it.
Yeah, and that's I love that, because reality is a lot of people do the things they think they're supposed to do based on what everyone else is doing, instead of actually looking at their business and saying, how will this work for me? And I've had a lot of people where we've turned around and they said like, I spend so much time on this, and they're like, stop doing it. And you're like, well, if the client want to go on a call, you have to do it. Like, no, you put it in black and white in your contract before they sign, say, you cannot phone me if that's what you want, right? Or you cannot, I don't know, you'll not get a response on anytime after Friday 4 p.m. if that's what you want, right? So again, it's love that statement. Love that statement. So what are the key things? Like, if obviously you're working with a lot of small business owners, but where do you see the number one area where most businesses are falling short from being able to deliver just that?
Well, there's two main areas here. The first one is in the marketing. They don't really have a clear vision for their uniqueness, as Seth couldn't refer to as the purple cow. Your cow looks like every other cow, and there's nothing, he said, if you're not remarkable, you're invisible. And so it's really managing your business and leaning into it to make sure that you know what makes you different, and combining that with what we call creating a no-brainer offer on that uniqueness. So you're not just standing out, but you have an easy way for them to take the next step. And so there's a whole lot in that. And the core of your growth should be built on your reputation, not on some digital doodad or the latest fancy internet sales funnel. It's got to be built on your reputation, which is built on delivering your services at a higher level of excellence. Is following up, following through. The second thing, Matt, is really on hiring and building and training the team to do the work. And a lot of business owners, they micromanage, they're right close to it. They're very frustrated at the level of it, the output and the productivity of their employees. And so they get rid of them. And it's like a revolving door, or people leave, the good people leave because of the incompetence of management. So, helping people create an environment where the employees are important, but you don't want to be held hostage by your employees. So there's a whole hiring system that you're always be recruiting, is what we say. And then you're always training and getting really clear on what your expectations are. And you have a regular do loop process, or at least a weekly meeting where you evaluate, you're on track or you're off track. You're green or you're red. You're making it or you're falling short. And a lot of companies don't have that clarity where the employees have a clear vision of how they can improve. They just slide by until they get fired.
Yeah.
So
I would probably have started with the second one, because that's the angle I see all the time. But
right.
You're definitely. The clients I tend to work with is people who have often figured out their marketing channel. They're often like a little bit bigger, right? So they've already got a solid offer. Obviously, it can always be improved and stuff, but they're often a little bit bigger. So I see the delegation piece and recruitment really is sort of the two main ones, right? And for the exact reasons that you just mentioned. So,
and Matt, what I see too is once you get your team in place, first of all, you make the assumption that nobody's going to stay there. So you're always recruiting. There's a whole hiring system that we help people cut down their interview and the whole recruiting process by 75%, just saving a lot of time. But after that, it's creating what I call creating a cadence in your business. So you get clear what the expectations are, and you reduce those down to what they call a key performance indicator, KPI, and I'm sure you preach this to your people. And then we have a regular meeting time where we set a predictable weekly schedule where we're going to address the issues. We're going to evaluate performance. And it's not like this big annual review. It's just looking at the little and we take a look at, here's the expectations, here's what you actually did. What did you learn? If you're in the red, how are you going to get in the green? And you press into them. You don't just have a monologue to your employees because they just tone out. Is you engage their brain to help them solve, how are you going to move from the red to the green, from underperforming to meeting the standard that we have. And it's through that cadence of regular accountability meetings that really makes the business begin to hum, begins to run on its own momentum.
Yep, we speak exactly the same language. So
excellent. Yeah,
that's yeah, and that, I mean, my what I always tell people is that if performance isn't looked at regularly, people think you don't care. Because in so many businesses, it's like, oh yeah, well, here you're an employee, blah blah blah, whatever happens. And a lot of the time, reality is in many bigger businesses, people don't care. But when you are particularly a smaller business, I mean, you should care anywhere, wherever you are, but particularly in a smaller business, right, you cannot afford not to care. Because the problem is you can't afford to just go out and hire 20 people that are sitting twiddling their thumbs, right? Like in a small business, you need to make the money you're investing drive growth, and it only will if your staff is actually delivering a solid output, right?
You and I are singing from the same hymn book, if you will.
Definitely. So when you go through with clients, how often does it typically take from you start a client engagement to you feel the clients get to the point where they want to be or where you want them to be?
Well, we have two phases here. The first phase is, we call it our 3-month boost. And what we'll do is during those first 3 months of working with the client, we'll identify all the pain points where all the squeaky wheels are. And we'll look at all the areas of the business and we'll chart a coaching pathway that we may not have it humming at the end of 3 months, but we set up the blueprint, and then we're a coaching company that is, we're a do it for you and a do it with you coaching company. I did for years, I was a coaching company that says, do these 7 things or do these 4 things. And here's the 3 things that rhyme that you have to remember. And they come back the next week, we'd meet with them and, well, how'd you do in getting this? Oh, I'm too busy, I'm overwhelmed. So we have an implementation team that does most of the work for them, where we lay out a blueprint in the marketing, the sales, the hiring process. Usually they're the accounting. Most of our companies are 10 employees or less, but we have a lot of companies that are over 100 million, but most of them, when they start with us, they have 10 employees or less. And so a lot of these things are not laid out, but we make sure that they have a clear blueprint. We help implement that on the marketing, on the sales, on the hiring, on the accountability systems, creating that weekly schedule, that cadence in their business. We get this all set up for them. Usually they'll get 2 or 3 times their investment during this time. I mean, they'll see fairly immediately results. But then we go on a month by month after that, just to continually helping them implement and holding them accountable to getting these high results. We had one plumber in Denver that started with us. They're about $90,000 a month. And the 2 owners were working between 80 and 90 hours a week. They were a slave to the business. And we're about 2 years and now 4 months into it. And we laid that foundation, the blueprint, we implemented, and we've been continuing to work with them. They just topped $600,000 a month, just this last month in January. And they're working between 40 and 45 hours a week. The business is behaving for them. They just told me they've got $1.4 million in the bank because we get into getting people to aggressively save, just the discipline of it. And they're like in hog heaven. And I just had a meeting with our top clients. And the one partner was down in Costa Rica, just enjoying himself. He hadn't done that for years. So that's the kind of stuff we like to see.
Solid. Yeah, it's good. And I mean, the whole thing is, what I always tell people is, it's not rocket science, right? Like there's definitely things to be done, and there's logical things. There's logical things people don't know just because they haven't been in it, right? Like it's not like people are purposely not doing what they know they should be doing, right? But a lot of it is, one part of it is mindset, and I spend a lot of time on that, right? Because many people are still like ingrained in the I'm a worker bee mindset, and the problem is you need to get out of that. Like the second you start managing other people, the second you start running a business, you need to get out of that mindset if you want to be successful, right? Because you cannot be in a situation where you're constantly thinking about your own performance and your own, oh, what did I do today? Did I run out and did XYZ? Like that doesn't matter anymore. When you manage other people, the only thing that matters is what they do, right?
Yeah, it's so true. So true, Matt. I mean, obviously you've been in this business. I checked you out, and you have a training that you provide at no cost. I'm like, are you crazy? This is like meaty stuff you put in that. So I did my homework on you beforehand, and you walk the talk. This is really, really solid stuff. And it sounds like we have some very similar approaches. I also provide like a whole service bureau marketing approach to redo the website, or to do all their SEO and their online advertising and their digital marketing. And we handle all that. So we help them in setting up all the structure, but we also help in the monthly, just keeping all the marketing going and helping them close more sales. But yeah, what I'm talking about with all this stuff.
It's about, you need to find your zone of genius, right? So for me, it's always been the passion. Like I actually saw it back from the corporate world when I saw, people constantly getting promoted into these positions that had no idea what they were doing. And it's such a shame, because the thing is, you take people who are great performers, you perform them into a job where they have no idea what they're doing, and you don't give them any support because you don't really know what you're doing either. Again, people are not trying to be bad people, they just don't know any better. And the whole thing is that if you actually go and invest a little bit, particularly in your managers, right? I mean, if you're running a business, if you're promoting people into management, that's because they're worth investing in, right? And you definitely need to give them, like, just because someone is a good salesman doesn't automatically make them a great manager for a sales team, right? Now, my philosophy is, so a lot of people saying that you often can, but my philosophy is, if someone have the skill to learn to be an amazing salesman, they can also learn how to be a great manager.
That's a really good point.
They aren't by nature, because no one is. Just like everyone else, they need to learn it. But a lot of the time people get disappointed and they promote someone who's great at a job and say, oh, I thought they would be so good. But and it's usually because they don't get the right support. Most people, in my experience, can learn to be great managers, business owners. Again, people are different and they need to work different, that you need to use your strength differently.
So good.
But people can learn it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, to get real tactical and practical with that is, how much of your gross sales, what percentage of your gross sales are you allocating to pour in training wise for your people, to hire somebody like Matt to say, let me fine tune them and their productivity will double here in this time. Or, it's like setting time aside in your calendar. Well, I'm too busy for that. Well, you're too busy not to do it. I mean, if you want the business to bow down and to serve you, you gotta invest in it. So it's setting time, blocking some time to train your people, and and getting folks involved from the outside that are experts at helping to set up the kind of blueprint you need. That's the kind of stuff that really helps the company begin to move towards working for you instead of you working for it. So,
and sometimes I tell people, and it's a little bit like raising kids, right? And not saying that employees are kids, but the whole concept is that if you have kids and you don't spend time with them, like you're literally too busy to spend time with them, and then you wonder why they don't grow up and behave well, or they don't grow up and have a solid attitude and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's no need to wonder, right? Like just like everyone else, kids learn things by getting supported by having people around that care about them, right? And it's exactly the same thing when you're looking at employees, right? Like no one ever wakes up in the morning and says, I want to go do a bad job today. Like it doesn't happen. I've never met someone, right? So the whole point is that people want to do a good job. If they're not doing a good job, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't know how to, it's because they're confused, it's because stuff are not clear. And if they're not doing a good job, that's not their fault in principle. It falls back to you as a business owner or manager.
So, and then if we think, well, they don't want to, and you assume a negative motive on them, then you're going to project that negativity towards them. And it shuts them down further. And that's why I like to say in management, I like to say, to leaders, to CEOs, business owners, first the environment, then their behavior. Meaning people are going to react and respond to the environment you create. And so, how much of this activity is reacting to the dysfunction you're bringing into the company versus how much of it is really their behavior, because you've created this environment of growth and opportunity for training and this kind of thing, and they're just shutting it down. Well, those are two different things, but an effective leader first goes inward before they go outward. Ineffective leaders will first go outward and blame versus going inward to say, what can I do to create a better environment? So leaders really focus on creating an environment for their people to be productive. So anyways, that says it in line with what you're talking about here.
Yeah. And again, like fundamentally, it's my number one recruitment thing, right? Like when I look for people, the one thing I look for is, do they take responsibility for their situation, whatever it is? Because reality is, I've always found that if people take responsibility for where they are in life, then they're generally going to be a better employee. Whereas everything else being equal, if you have someone that keeps blaming everyone else, yes, you can definitely train them up. Yes, they can definitely learn things. But for me, it's one of the easiest hacks of actually finding people who will do great work, because you want people who take ownership when they make mistakes. You want people who figure stuff out instead of just sitting around blaming anyone else for whatever isn't working. Right.
Really good. Yep. So agree with that.
Awesome. So Tim, from your personal experience, what's the biggest mistakes you have ever made? Management wise?
Yeah, well, leadership and management first starts inward again before you go outward. And so one of my biggest mistakes, the most costly mistakes, is we're actually going to share it in the next session here. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to make sure people are interested to hear it. It's a lack of allocating time at the beginning of my day for power planning. And so there's a whole process for power planning where I've got two documents that I update, my calendar and my master to-do list. And so I'll go through all my emails and texts and whatever, and I'm assigning things to this or that, or I'm delegating out, or the 4 Ds is either I delete it. If I can delete it, I delete it. Can I delegate it? I want to delegate it. Can I delay it? Does it have to be done now, or is it really going to be better done 2 weeks from now? Or do I do it? And if I do it, I assign it to either the calendar or my to-do list. And not, and then I have a pattern where I ask myself the same anywhere. It's from 6 to 8 questions. I got 7 questions where it brings me through all aspects of the company, where I think about it brand new every morning. And it makes me think about what do I need to address? What do I need to work on? What needs improvement? What needs praise or congratulations? And so I'm going through this process. It takes me a little bit of time, but when I have my act together, I'm really clear at what I need to do to help improve the organization. It helps me interact with people that much better. And when I'm going and I'm just shooting from the hip, which I've done for many weeks and months and years, I'm not perfect. It's cost me a lot of money, but just shooting from the hip and not taking the time to manage my own time, Matt, has really cost me a lot. And so that's like almost like a religious ritual that I follow now. So,
yeah, I do it on a weekly basis, but same concept, really, just sitting down. And for me, it's always about business priorities, right? So I sit down and I'll look at my calendar. And if I say, this quarter, my focus is sales, that's what's going to move me forward. If I look at my calendar and I see, 80% of what's on my calendar is not about sales, then I know I haven't got my priorities aligned, right? Now, obviously, sometimes shit happens, but most of the time, the whole thing is you want to make sure that your calendar and what you're planning to do actually align with the priorities that you tell yourself, at least, that you have in the business. Because if you don't, then again, as you said, you're going to end up working on the wrong things, or you're going to do whatever comes. Actually, what you do is what comes easy. And it's one of those areas where people also don't delegate well, because they're like, oh, I can do that. It takes 5 minutes. But the whole problem is that, if I shouldn't be doing it because this is not a priority, then it makes it much easier.
It may take a little bit of time, but what it's doing is taking brain space that is taken away from creative hovering, is what I call it, where you're hovering over the problem, not run away from it. And you get distracted by so many little things that you don't get the big thing really focused on. It requires intense thought over more than 5 minutes. And so, yeah, I think it's really, really important just to continue to re-look at your business, re-look at it. And I do it daily just because it's there's enough going on. And I've got the coaching division, and I've got a business acquisition division. And so there's a lot of things that we're looking at, but it's, I really, really important. Like, what's the most important thing for you to get done today, and to focus on getting that done, and has been something that's cost me a lot. But it's, when I implement it, it's caused our business to be one of the bigger coaching organizations actually, I think in the world now, because I'm part of a group of everybody that's, multi-million-dollar coaching organization. And there's not many in that level. So, but yeah, that would be the answer to that, Matt.
Cool.
So
love it. Well, Tim, thank you very, very much for joining me today. Before we finish up, any sort of recommended resources or any other sort of things you want to recommend for people here?
Yeah, what I do is Matt, is we offer folks what we call a growth plan. And a growth plan is, we'll look at the strengths and weaknesses of the business. We really look at the marketing, the sales, the hiring, the data management, and just really look at the whole company. We get a 3-year goal going, and then we give them at least 8 concrete steps to take to get to that goal. We normally charge $2,500 for that process. It's a very involved process. Your eyeballs are opened up here. But if they identify, the people that are on this show, if they identify themselves as being part of Matt's group, we're going to waive that $2,500. So I'd like to be able to provide a growth plan. It's just a great way of looking at your business, And they can email me directly. It's just tim@redmondgrowth.com. It's REDMOND growth, GROWTH, tim@redmondgrowth.com, or look at Redmond Growth Consulting. Get a hold of us, identify yourself as just say Matt's awesome or Matt's cool, and then we'll waive that fee. So I'd love to be able to provide that to your folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Tim. That sounds like an awesome opportunity for people. So excellent.
Very good. Thank you.
What is the best way generally to contact you if people are eager to get hold of you after they hear this conversation?
Well, they can go to our website, Redmond Growth. So it's REDMOND growth, GROWTH.com. And there's forms to fill out there to get a hold of us. If they wanted to email me directly, I mean, I've got a lot of staff here, but I like to personally handle the people that are part of your group here. And so they can email me directly, tim@redmondgrowth.com is probably the best way. So either email or website, and hopefully I can be of help to some of these people.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you very much for joining me today. That was a super interesting conversation.
Really enjoyed it, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for the audience, thank you for listening all the way to the end. We'll be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.